The chamber was cold, silent, and full of eyes. Alien nobles stood in perfect lines, their smooth skin glowing faintly in the dim light. At the center of the hall sat Queen Rilana, the ruler of the Volari Empire, a species known for their logic, order, and emotionless dominance. Her eyes, silver and sharp, rested on one being who did not belong among them. A human, standing tall with his hands behind his back, dressed in a plain black jacket, dirt still on his boots. His name was Commander Elias Reed, and at that moment, he was surrounded by hundreds of aliens who believed he was a fool. "You humans talk of honor," the Queen said softly, her voice echoing through the hall. "But when the time comes to serve, you hesitate. Do you fear commitment?" Elias did not flinch, his calm face unreadable. Around him, the alien courtiers whispered. They had all heard the rumors, how the human commander had been brought here to sign the Reproductive Alliance contract, a document that would tie human genetics into Volari control forever. The Queen had promised peace, but everyone knew what it really meant. Ownership. Rilana smiled, her silver crown glimmering. "Your people need protection. Our fleets guard your colonies. In exchange, your race will join ours. Through shared offspring, our future will be unified." She leaned forward, her eyes glowing faintly. "Sign the contract, Commander Reed. It is only words." Elias stepped forward, the faint hum of alien machinery echoing around him. He looked at the holographic document that floated in the air before him. The symbols glowed bright blue, each line binding humanity's fate. His jaw tightened. For weeks, the Volari had tried to charm him. They sent envoys, gifts, and promises. They said it was not slavery, only unity. But he had seen their unified worlds and the planet stripped of identity, where alien mothers raised children that no longer knew who they were. He looked back up at the Queen. "You want my people's future," he said quietly, "but not our freedom." The room fell silent. The Queen tilted her head, smiling as if humoring a child. "Freedom is an illusion, Commander. Survival is what matters. You have seen our fleets. You know we could erase your species in a day." He nodded slowly. "Maybe. But there's something you'll never understand about humans." Her silver eyes narrowed. "And what is that?" Elias's voice stayed calm, but his words carried through the room like thunder. "We don't survive by obeying. We survive by refusing." The Queen blinked, taken aback for a brief second before she laughed softly, a musical, mocking sound. "You refuse an empire? You would doom your own kind out of pride?" Elias didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the contract, the glowing blue hologram hovering between them. His hand passed through it, and the interface asked for his confirmation. Everyone expected him to sign. Even the human diplomats in the corner held their breath, afraid to intervene. But Elias didn't sign. He grabbed the physical copy the aliens had prepared, a ceremonial scroll meant for display, and without a word, he tore it in half. The sound of ripping silk echoed across the chamber. Every alien froze. The Queen rose slowly, her voice cold as ice. "What did you just do?" Elias looked up, meeting her gaze. "I shredded it," he said simply. "We don't need your contract." The silence turned to chaos. Guards stepped forward, weapons humming. The courtiers gasped in disbelief. The air shimmered with tension, and for the first time someone had openly defied the Queen inside her own throne room. She stared at him, her silver eyes burning. "You think your little gesture means anything, human?" she whispered. "You will regret this insult." Elias didn't back away. He took a deep breath, his voice steady. "Maybe, but my people will never be born as slaves." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the Queen raised her hand. The guards aimed their plasma spears, ready to strike. But before she could give the command, something unexpected happened. Every screen in the chamber flickered to life. A message appeared, not in the alien language, but in human text. "Transmission received. Human fleet entering orbit." The hall fell into stunned silence. The Queen's smile faded. Elias met her gaze once more. "You said we were all talk," he said softly. "But you were wrong." The chamber's light dimmed as the sound of distant engines rumbled above the planet. Through the glass ceiling, bright blue streaks appeared in the sky, dozens of human ships breaking through the atmosphere. Every alien eye turned upward in shock, and the Queen, for the first time in centuries, felt fear. The moment the human fleet entered orbit, the Volari palace trembled with shock. Holographic displays filled with hundreds of red warnings. Energy readings from the sky blazed like a storm. The Queen's advisors shouted in their strange language, trying to understand how a primitive species could bring such power to their doorstep. Commander Elias Reed stood in the same spot, calm and steady. The glowing reflection of the ships danced across his eyes. He didn't smile, but the silence in his stance spoke louder than any word. The Queen rose slowly from her throne, her long silver cloak trailing across the polished black floor. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice cold but uncertain. "Is this a threat?" Elias looked up at the sky beyond the glass ceiling. "No," he said quietly. "It's a reminder." The guards tightened their grip on their plasma spears. The humans stood unarmed, yet the room felt like a battlefield where the balance had already shifted. Outside, the human ships formed a formation, 20 vessels, sleek and shining, carrying the marks of the United Earth Fleet. They were not as large as the Valari dreadnoughts, but they had come with purpose. Their lights moved like fireflies above the clouds, each one symbolizing humanity's defiance. "Queen Raylana," Elias said, turning toward her, "you believed we were all talk. You believed humans would kneel for safety. But we never wanted safety. We wanted respect." Her silver eyes narrowed, flickering with hidden fury. "You come into my hall," she hissed, "tear my contract and bring your weapons to my world. This is respect?" Elias met her gaze. "It's truth," the alien nobles whispered angrily, some demanding his arrest, others suggesting negotiations. But the Queen's pride burned too strong. She motioned for silence. "Do you think your fleet scares me?" she said softly. "I could destroy them with one command." Elias nodded slowly. "Then do it. Show your people what happens when power rules without honor." Her hand froze in midair. The silence after his words was heavy. Even her generals hesitated. The Queen's authority had never been questioned before, certainly not by a single human. Then, from behind Elias, another hologram shimmered to life. This time it was Admiral Vasquez, commander of the orbiting fleet. Her stern face appeared above the throne, her voice echoing through the hall. "Commander Reed," she said formally, "we've received your signal. Fleet is on standby, awaiting your command." The aliens gasped. The Queen's expression hardened. "Your command?" she repeated. "You dare assume control in my court?" Elias turned his head slightly. "I dare to remind you," he said, "that humans may be small, but we do not bow." For a moment both sides stood frozen, an empire and a single man facing each other like reflections of opposite worlds. Then, slowly, the Queen stepped down from her throne. "You think defiance makes you powerful?" she said quietly, circling him like a predator. "But you are alone here. You stand among enemies." Elias's voice stayed steady. "Maybe, but alone is how humans started, and look how far we came." Her face twitched, just slightly. Then she gestured to the guards. "Take him," she ordered coldly. The soldiers advanced, their weapons glowing bright blue, but before they could reach him, a beam of light cut through the ceiling, sharp and golden. Every alien ducked in alarm. A human shuttle descended through the beam, landing softly in the middle of the hall. Its ramp opened with a hiss. From the smoke stepped 3 armored soldiers, their visors reflecting the Queen's pale face. The lead soldier spoke through his helmet, voice clear. "With all due respect, Your Majesty, our commander does not stand alone." Gasps filled the room again. Elias didn't move. He looked at the Queen once more. "We came to talk," he said softly. "But if you want to test our silence, you'll find out how loud humans can get." The Queen's fingers trembled slightly, though her voice stayed smooth. "You think this changes anything?" He looked at the holographic contract remained still on the floor, torn and glowing. "It already has," he said. "Because now everyone knows the truth. You need us more than we need you." Her eyes flashed, but deep within them a seed of doubt had begun to grow. Outside, the thunder of engines echoed again. Human ships spread wider across the planet's orbit, forming a protective ring. The balance of power, long tilted toward the Valari Empire, had begun to tremble. The Queen turned away, hiding her expression. "You have made your point, Commander," she said, her tone sharp as glass. "But know this, no one humiliates the Valari and walks away free." Elias's answer was calm, almost gentle. "We'll see about that." He walked toward the shuttle as the guards stood frozen, unsure whether to obey the Queen's order or their own fear. The ramp closed behind him, and the shuttle rose back into the beam of light, vanishing into the clouds. The Queen stood still for a long moment, her claws curling into fists. Around her, her council whispered about retaliation, about war, about revenge. But deep inside, Rilana was not angry. She was curious. Humans had just done something no other species had ever dared: stand in front of the Valari throne and say no. And for the first time in centuries, the Queen wanted to know why. The grand halls of the Valari palace had never felt so silent. Days had passed since the human commander tore the contract and vanished into the clouds, yet the echo of his words still lingered in the Queen's mind. "We don't survive by obeying. We survive by refusing." Those words haunted her more than any weapon. Queen Rilana sat alone in her private chamber, surrounded by shimmering data screens. Reports from her admirals filled the air. Warnings about the human fleet that now hovered in orbit, careful but unafraid. Her generals demanded immediate retaliation, but she didn't respond. She simply stared at the hologram of Earth floating before her, blue and small yet strangely radiant. Primitive, she whispered to herself, and yet unpredictable. She turned her gaze toward the table where the torn ceremonial scroll lay inside a crystal case. The tear marks glowed faintly under the chamber light, a permanent reminder of her humiliation. No other species had ever refused her decree. No one had ever walked away from her throne alive. But the human had. Her aide entered quietly. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing, "the Council demands action. They say we must strike now before the humans spread their defiance." She didn't look up. "And what will that prove? That we fear what we don't understand." The aide hesitated. "It will prove our strength." Rilana turned her silver eyes toward him, her tone sharp. "Strength is not fear disguised as pride." The aide bowed again, retreating. The doors closed, and the Queen was left in silence once more. She rose and walked toward the window overlooking the capital city of Velar Prime. The skyline shimmered under twin suns. Beneath her tower, millions of her people moved in perfect order, calm, efficient, obedient. Every motion was planned, every thought monitored. The Valari called it peace. But for the first time she wondered if it was something else. She whispered softly, "Do they obey? Or are they afraid?" Her reflection in the glass looked back at her, a queen who had conquered worlds, who had ruled through logic and control. But now for the first time she felt a strange stirring inside her chest, something she could not name. Curiosity. Later that night she summoned her personal ship, cloaked and unmarked. No guards, no advisors, just her and her will. The vessel lifted silently into the dark sky, slicing through the atmosphere toward the orbit where the human fleet remained. Her AI protested. "Entering human proximity violates Council protocols." "Override them," she said coldly. "I wish to see them myself." Moments later, her ship drifted into the shadow of a human frigate. The vessel was smaller than any Valari design, rough-edged, built not for beauty but for endurance. Yet it moved with purpose. It looked alive. She hailed them through an encrypted channel. "This is Queen Rilana of Velar Prime. I request audience." For a long moment there was only silence. Then a familiar voice replied, steady and calm. "You came alone, didn't you?" It was Elias Reed. Her lips curved slightly. "You expected I would send an army?" "Honestly," he said, "yes." She almost smiled. "Perhaps you don't know me as well as you think." "Maybe not," he answered. "But I know pride when I see it." The air between them was tense but not hostile. She studied his face through the holographic link. Humans looked so fragile, so limited, yet there was something unbreakable in his eyes, a strength that came not from power but from choice. She finally spoke. "Why do you risk everything for refusal? What logic is there in throwing away safety for chaos?" Elias leaned forward slightly. "Because safety without freedom isn't living," he said. "You build perfect cities, perfect control, but tell me, when was the last time someone told you no?" Her breath caught, though she didn't show it. "No one dares. That's the problem," he said softly. "Without no, your world has no soul." She sat back, silent for a long moment. His words hit deeper than she expected. "You humans," she murmured, "you find pride in pain. You turn defiance into faith. That's why your kind is dangerous, he smiled faintly. Or maybe that's why we're alive. The channel went quiet again. Outside, the stars drifted by slowly. For the first time, Queen Raylana didn't feel like a ruler. She felt like a student standing at the edge of something she had never understood. Commander Reed, she said finally, what is it you want? He paused before answering. We don't want to rule you. We just want the right to be ourselves. Her silver eyes softened, though her tone stayed strong. You may have just changed more than you realize, human. And as the transmission ended, the Queen leaned back in her seat, her gaze lost among the stars. The human fleet glowed in the distance, small lights of rebellion against an endless empire. She whispered to herself, almost in awe, perhaps, it's time the galaxy learns what it means to be human. Queen Raylana could not sleep, not even for a single night. Every time she closed her eyes, the human's words echoed in her mind. Without no, your world has no soul. They were strange words, simple yet powerful. She had ruled for centuries, believing her empire was perfect, that obedience created peace. But now that peace felt like silence, a silence too heavy to ignore. In the deep vaults of her palace, where ancient archives glowed with blue light, Raylana walked alone. Only she had access here. The walls were lined with knowledge stolen from 1,000 conquered species. Yet until now she had never bothered to study one group, the humans. She stood before a console and her voice echoed softly. Open human records, all files collected since first contact. The machine hummed, projecting images into the air. Photos, recordings, fragments of history. Humans standing in deserts in snow and space. Humans fighting wars, building cities, saving strangers, crying, laughing. So much emotion. So much chaos. Raylana studied every image carefully. In one video, a human soldier carried his wounded enemy from a battlefield. In another, a young woman held her child under a burning sky, refusing to give up hope. None of it made sense. These were not logical beings. They were alive in a way she had never seen. Her advisor's voice broke through the silence. My queen, you should not be here. These archives are forbidden to be studied without council supervision. She didn't look up. Who forbade it? The council, your majesty, he said softly. Then the council fears truth, she replied coldly. Leave me. He hesitated but obeyed. The doors closed behind him, and Raylana continued scrolling through human files. The more she saw, the more unsettled she felt. How can such fragile creatures stand against empires? She murmured. How do they keep fighting when all logic says to stop? Her eyes fell upon a human saying in the records, we fall, we rise, we learn, we adapt, and we keep going. She read the words aloud, her voice trembling slightly. Keep going. Then she found a document labeled Project Survival, Mars Colonization. It was a record of humans struggling to live on a barren world. They had no oxygen, no food, no help, yet somehow they made it work. They turned death into life. Her hands tightened on the edge of the console. She whispered they should have perished. But they did not. As the hours passed, she found another file marked Earth Wars, 21st century. It showed destruction beyond comprehension. Cities reduced to ashes, oceans burning, yet after it all, humans rebuilt. Again and again, no matter the pain, they returned stronger. Raylana sat down slowly. They don't just survive, she said softly. They evolve through their suffering. It was then she began to understand what frightened her most. The Valari had mastered control. Humans had mastered resistance. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. A secret communication appeared on the screen. It was Commander Elias Reed. Couldn't sleep either? He asked with a faint smile. She hesitated. You humans are full of contradictions. You destroy what you love and still call it hope. He nodded. That's because hope isn't about control. It's about faith. Faith, she repeated quietly, testing the word as if it were a foreign taste. My people do not believe. We calculate. That's why you fear us, Elias said calmly. We're what you can't calculate. The connection flickered, but before it ended, he added softly. You can't understand humans by studying us. You have to feel it. After he disappeared, the Queen sat still. The chamber lights flickered softly around her, and for the first time in centuries she felt uncertain. She looked again at the torn contract inside its case. It had once been a symbol of power, but now it looked like a mistake carved in pride. She whispered into the empty room. Maybe control is not the same as order. Maybe order is not life. Outside her window, the twin suns of Valar Prime rose slowly over the horizon, painting the sky gold. And as she watched their light, a decision began to form in her heart. A dangerous, forbidden decision. If she wanted to truly understand humanity, she couldn't just read about them. She had to see them with her own eyes. The Queen turned toward her console. "Prepare a covert journey to Earth," she ordered quietly. "Under my personal command." The AI hesitated. "Your Majesty, the Council will not approve." "Then they won't know," she interrupted coldly. "I am going to see the species that defied an empire." And as her ship prepared in silence, R'hllana's reflection shimmered against the window. For the first time, the perfect Queen of the Valari looked uncertain, but also truly alive. Under the pale light of dawn, a small unmarked ship entered Earth's atmosphere. It moved silently, disguised as a meteor. The Queen of the Valari Empire sat inside, dressed not in royal armor but in plain human-style clothes, a long coat, boots, and a scarf that hid the faint glow of her silver skin. She looked nothing like the ruler who commanded galaxies. She looked ordinary. The ship landed quietly in the hills outside a human city. She stepped out, breathing the cool air for the first time. It smelled strange, wet soil, smoke, and life. So many sounds filled the air, birds, machines, laughter, and arguments all at once. It was messy, chaotic, and beautiful. Her AI spoke softly from a wrist device. "My Queen, environmental data suggests this is a low-tech settlement zone. Recommend immediate return before detection." R'hllana's eyes scanned the horizon where distant towers reached toward the sky. "No," she said softly. "We observe. We learn." She started walking. Hours later, she reached the outskirts of a small town. People passed by without noticing her. They were too busy living, some smiling, some tired, some lost in thought. She found it strange. No one bowed. No one looked away. Everyone was free to move, speak, laugh, even argue. On Valar Prime, such noise would be punished. Here it was normal. She stopped near a food stall where a man sold roasted corn. He looked up and smiled. "You lost, ma'am. You look new around here." R'hllana blinked. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, casually, without fear. "Yes," she replied slowly, "I am visiting." "Welcome, then," he said cheerfully, handing her a piece of corn. "On the house. First-timers don't pay." She stared at the food, confused. "You give without reason?" He laughed. "Not everything needs a reason. Sometimes it's just nice to help." She took it carefully, studying him. His face was worn but kind, his hands rough from work. She tasted the food. It was warm, smoky, simple, yet somehow comforting. She didn't understand why her chest felt lighter. Later, as evening fell, she wandered toward the town square. A group of children played near a fountain, their laughter echoing in the night. One small girl tripped and fell. R'hllana instinctively moved toward her, kneeling to help. The girl looked up, teary-eyed, and smiled. "Thank you, lady." The Queen hesitated, then asked softly, "Why thank me? I only helped you stand," the girl giggled. "Because you cared." Then she ran off to rejoin her friends. Cared. R'hllana whispered the word, watching the children play. It was a simple word, yet it felt heavy. Her empire taught that emotions weakened the mind, that caring slowed progress. But now she saw something different. These humans, so fragile, found strength in their feelings, not weakness. As the night deepened, she found a small inn. The owner, an older woman, gave her a room without question. "You must be tired, dear," she said kindly. "Get some rest." In her room, R'hllana looked at herself in the mirror. She removed her disguise, revealing faint traces of her silver skin and glowing eyes. For the first time, she didn't see a queen. She saw someone who didn't understand her place anymore. Suddenly, a message appeared on her wrist device. Urgent, encrypted, from Valar Prime. It was from her council. "Your absence has been noted. Human fleet still in orbit. Tensions rising, awaiting your command." She stared at the message. Her people were ready for war, waiting for her signal. One word from her could start a conflict that would burn both worlds. But after what she had seen, the kindness, the freedom, the laughter, she hesitated. Then another message flashed on her screen. It was from Elias Reed. "We know you came, don't worry. No one will harm you. If you really want to understand us, come to the Northern Refuge tomorrow. We'll show you who we are." She read it twice. No threats, no demands, just an invitation. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring out the window at the sleeping town. The stars above looked closer here, softer, alive. For the first time in her long reign, Rilana felt something she could not name: humility. She whispered to herself, "They live in chaos. Yet their hearts are free." The AI spoke softly. "My queen, what are your orders?" Rilana looked out at the dawn forming on the horizon. "No orders," she said. "Only understanding." And as the first rays of light touched her face, the most powerful being in the galaxy made her decision, not as a ruler, but as a student of humanity. The next morning was wrapped in mist. The queen, still in disguise, walked down a lonely road toward the coordinates Elias Reed had sent her. The air was cool, filled with the distant hum of wind turbines and the scent of pine. Birds darted through the fog, singing songs that had no order, no purpose, yet somehow brought peace. Her small transport drone followed silently behind her, projecting a faint light to guide the way. "My queen," the AI whispered cautiously. "Satellite scans indicate no fortified structure ahead. Are you certain this is wise?" Rilana didn't slow her steps. "Wisdom," she said quietly, "is not found in safety." After hours of walking, the mist cleared, revealing a wide valley dotted with simple shelters made from metal scraps and solar panels. Humans moved everywhere, men, women, and children working side by side, repairing tools, planting crops, laughing together. They wore no uniforms, followed no ranks, and yet everything seemed to work in perfect rhythm. Rilana stopped at the edge of the camp. "This," she whispered, "is the Northern Refuge?" "Yes," a voice answered behind her. She turned to see Elias Reed walking toward her, wearing his dark jacket, sleeves rolled up, a calm smile on his face. "Welcome to humanity, Your Majesty." Her disguise flickered briefly. Her silver eyes flashed through the illusion. "You knew I'd come," she said softly. "I hoped you would," he replied. "You didn't come here for diplomacy. You came for truth." She followed him through the camp. Everywhere she looked, humans were doing things that defied her understanding. A group of children was teaching an elderly woman to use a data tablet, laughing when she pressed the wrong buttons. Two engineers were arguing loudly over a broken power converter, yet a minute later they hugged and got back to work. "They argue, they laugh, they forgive," Rilana murmured. "On Valor Prime, disagreement means weakness. Here, it's connection." Elias nodded. "We don't have the strength of your fleets, Queen Rilana. What we have is each other. That's how we survive every storm." He led her to a small open structure at the center of the camp. A holographic map floated above the table, showing dozens of red zones, places destroyed in wars, places they were rebuilding. "These are the refugee colonies," he explained. "Not just humans. Some are aliens your empire displaced." Her expression shifted slightly. "You shelter them?" "Of course," he said simply. "Anyone who's lost everything deserves a place to start again." She turned to him slowly. "Even those who once served my rule?" Elias looked straight into her eyes. "Especially them." The queen fell silent, her gaze softening. "You confuse me, Commander. Power should belong to the strong, yet your people share it freely. You show mercy to those who once hurt you. How do you lead with such chaos?" He smiled faintly. "By remembering we're all broken in some way. That's what keeps us human." They stood quietly for a while, watching a group of children run past with a repaired drone, cheering as it lifted off. The joy on their faces made something twist inside her chest, something she had buried long ago. "On my world," she said slowly, "children are not taught to play. They are prepared to serve." Elias turned to her. "And do they smile?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "No." For the first time, she understood what her empire had truly taken from its people. Not freedom of body, but freedom of heart. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, the humans gathered around a fire. They sang songs, old ones, full of stories and pain and hope. Rilana sat among them, silent but listening. Each voice was different, imperfect, yet together they made something beautiful. She watched the flames dance and finally spoke. "Your kind sings in the darkness," she said softly. "Why?" An old man beside her smiled. "Because it reminds us that even in the dark, we're still here." Her silver eyes glimmered, reflecting the firelight. For the first time in her long life, Queen Rilana smiled. Not the cold smile of power, but one of quiet understanding. Later that night, when the camp was asleep, Elias found her standing near the cliff's edge looking at the stars. "You've seen what you came for," he said gently. "What will you do now?" She looked up at the sky where her own empire's ship still waited beyond the horizon. "I will not go back the same," she said. "My people believe strength means control, but now I see it means compassion." Elias stepped closer. "Then maybe you're more human than you think." A faint laugh escaped her lips. "Perhaps. Or maybe humans are more alien than I believed." They stood there under the stars, silent, knowing that whatever came next, the galaxy would never be the same. The sky above Valar Prime glowed with twin suns as Queen R'Ellana's ship descended toward her palace. Her disguise was gone, and so was her old certainty. The woman who left this planet days ago was an empress of logic and control, but the one returning now carried the fire of something far more dangerous: understanding. As the ship landed, her council waited in the grand hall, their faces sharp with anger and fear. The eldest advisor stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he said sternly, "you vanished without command approval. The human fleet remains in orbit. The Senate demands retaliation." She walked past him without a word, her long cloak brushing the floor. The nobles whispered as she passed. Her steps echoed like thunder. "Summon the broadcast," she ordered. "I will speak to the entire empire." Her aides hesitated. "Your Majesty, what message shall we prepare?" "The truth," she said softly. Within moments, her image was projected across every Valari screen. Cities, ships, colonies. Billions watched as their queen stood before the symbol of their empire, her silver eyes calm but burning with purpose. "My people," she began, her voice clear and steady. "For generations, we have believed strength means control, that obedience means peace. But I have seen a different truth." Gasps filled the chamber. No ruler had ever questioned the foundation of their empire. She continued, "I have walked among humans. I have seen how they live, with chaos, with emotion, with love. And yet they endure. They forgive, they rise. What we call weakness gives them strength we cannot measure." The council erupted in protest. "Blasphemy!" one shouted. "They are inferior creatures. Their chaos will destroy order." R'Ellana raised her hand, silencing them instantly. "Their chaos is life. Our order has become a cage." Her words rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Some aliens bowed their heads, unsure. Others glared with rage. Elias Reed appeared on the main display beside her, a live transmission from orbit. His image flickered, but his voice was firm. "We came not to conquer, but to coexist. If you strike us, we will defend. But if you stand beside us, the galaxy can be more than fear and obedience." Her general shouted again. "He threatens us. Give the order." R'Ellana turned toward them, her expression colder than steel. "You mistake courage for threat. That is our greatest flaw." A younger general stepped forward, defiant. "And if the council refuses your words?" R'Ellana looked at him for a long, silent moment. Then she smiled faintly. "Then I will dissolve the council." Gasps echoed. "You cannot." "I can," she said. "And I just did." Her voice carried power that silenced every protest. The queen turned to her communication officer. "Send this decree across the empire. The war with humanity is over. Effective immediately." Her advisor's hands trembled. "But, Your Majesty, this could tear apart the entire political system." "Then let it tear," she said firmly. "If an empire must collapse for truth to rise, let it fall." For the first time in Valari history, a ruler chose peace over pride. Outside, the capital's sky shimmered as the human fleet adjusted its orbit. A single message was transmitted to every ship and city. Peace recognized. Humanity and Valari stand as equals. Inside the hall, silence reigned. Some bowed in disbelief, others in awe. The queen turned off the broadcast and faced Elias's hologram once more. "You've changed me," she said quietly. Elias smiled faintly. "No, Your Majesty. You just saw what was already inside you." Her silver eyes softened. "Maybe, but now I will change the galaxy." He nodded. "Then humanity will stand with you." As the signal ended, R'Ellana walked to the balcony overlooking her world. The twin suns were setting, their light turning the sky gold and violet. Below, her people gathered in confusion and wonder, whispering her name. For the first time in 1,000 years, Valar Prime was not silent. It was alive. She raised her head toward the stars. Somewhere above, she knew humans were watching too, and for the first time she didn't see them as subjects or threats. She saw them as equals, as mirrors. Her whisper carried into the wind. You were right, human. Freedom is not something to control. It is something to feel. The stars shimmered brighter as if the universe itself had listened. And in that moment, the queen who once ruled through fear became the legend who ruled through understanding.